2 weeks ago, we had Graham Platner on the show. And who doggy, has there been a lot of news out of that Maine race since? Ravi and I may not be in the same place on this one, actually, in terms of just like how to handle the controversy. So that'll be a fun discussion. Many primaries were yesterday, so we'll get into those outcomes. Then there's a potpourri of news ranging from the 60-minute shakeup to Trump's $1.8 billion retreat. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority.
All right, Jason, for some reason, your face is frozen for me. I'm not sure if it's for the audience. Yeah, but it's all right. You
hear me all right?
I hear you okay. Yeah, there's like a very stoic pose there. But big news is coming out of these elections yesterday, so let's unpack them one at a time. The first, and a lot of these people we've had on the pod in some form. We've had at least one person in a lot of these races on the pod. Let's start with the Iowa Senate. Josh Turek defeated Zach Walz, who's been on this pod before, and I think the best place to start, and I want to get your take because I know you've been closer to this race, Jason, than I have been. But it's probably a good time to take stock of who our nominee is in Iowa, and a lot of people seem excited by this guy. Here's just like a short biographical video of him.
I was born an underdog. 21 surgeries by the age of 12. Spina bifida, caused by my dad's exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. A kid wearing Goodwill hand-me-downs with the wrong color lunch ticket. But I never doubted my right to the American dream. Sitting in my wheelchair, 9 years old, watching the Olympics, I dreamed of winning gold for my country too.
Guess who on the left side? Josh Turek. Back-to-back gold medals.
I campaigned just like I played basketball, outworking everyone, pushing the hills, crawling the stairs, all just to have a conversation with everyday Iowans. Did not matter the party, because it's working class families like mine paying the price for Ashley Hinson's corruption in Washington. Hinson helps herself and her donors, while Iowans get screwed in every deal. Hospitals closing, gas and grocery prices through the roof, and the farm economy hammered. Iowans deserve a senator who works for them again. So if you are ready to push for change, join me.
All right, Jason, I know you know Zach Walz, and so obviously we enjoyed having him on the pod and wish him the best coming out of this. But what's your sense of whether we can win Iowa with this Turek character?
Before I give you that answer, can you hear me all right? Since I just
we're all good. Yeah, I can see and hear you now well.
Yeah, I got this fancy new setup, and it just froze my screen. It looked great, and now
it looks great.
Whatever. That's how it goes. It's show business. Look, I mean, Turek seems like a very compelling candidate. Before I get into like handicapping the race, one thing I do want to say, look, I supported Zach Walz. Zach is a friend. So this can sound like sour grapes. It's not, because I have really good friends who support Josh Turek, and I think he is probably great too. In fact, our friend JD Schulten supported Josh Turek, and he can vote in Iowa, so I could see where that can matter, and I can't. But what I would say just about the race, not about like Turek himself. I mean, I have nothing to say. I don't know Josh Turek. I'm sure he's great. I do think you and I discuss a lot on this show primaries, and we tend to talk about them as like, you and I are not afraid of primaries. Like when Janet Mills was still in the race, or before she suspended her campaign in Maine, and everybody was like, some people were like, she needs to get out because, Platner has this other energy. And then other people were like, Platner should get out because we have an incumbent governor running. You and I kept saying, well, this is what primaries are for. It's to like battle test our people and, get all this, vetting done. And then they come out and they're stronger, and it's how you find the best candidate. And I do believe in that. And so I think it's an interesting strategy. And as an interesting, I don't think it's a good strategy that Schumer and the folks in Washington decided to lean into the primary for Senate in Iowa. And like Schumer affiliated PACs spent $10 million on TV boosting Turek. And Turek may very well be the better candidate. I don't know. I'm not an Iowan. Like, obviously I like Zach, but and my and this is not me saying like, what a mistake. Now you've got, I'm just saying like, if your argument, which it seemed to be, is that we're boosting this candidate because we consider this candidate more electable, to me, the surest way to figure out who is electable is have a primary and see who wins it.
Why. Yeah, I didn't even realize that, first of all. Second of all, I don't know why we would be spending any money in any primaries. We should save all our money for the general elections. Like, let the primaries play out.
Unless you have like a truly bad actor, like if you have like a Donald Trump character who's like got fascist tendencies or something, and for some reason, like, then I would say I would have expected the Republican Party long ago to, consolidate against him, and they didn't. So we would need to do that. But no one was saying anything like that in Iowa, nor would anybody. I mean, neither candidate was saying anything like that. They just decided he was, I guess, more electable. Now, it may have had a little to do with the fact that like they chose him originally. Zach was saying that there needed to be a change in Democratic leadership in the Senate. Turek wasn't. So like, I am troubled when I see, picking candidates based on who's going to pick Schumer as Democratic leader. Now, with all that said, do I think we can win Iowa? Yes, I do. Our friend Rob Sand,
we'll talk about him in a second.
Who I think is probably coming on the show sometime in the near future. He's running really, really well for governor in Iowa. As I've said before, running for governor is different than running for Senate because people believe governors have to do something, and Rob has this great record as auditor. Do I think it's winnable? Yes, they have a long record of Democratic senators, and this is a very good year for us. But it's definitely an uphill battle.
Yeah, here's a clip of Van Jones sizing up the dynamics in Iowa.
But look, I mean, Donald Trump has basically been stomping on the people of Iowa. As I just said, why can't they get the fertilizer? Because the Iran war has made it impossible for farmers to be able to fertilize their crops around the world, including in Iowa. You got a state that was there for Donald Trump, was there for him 3 times in a row, and is getting just stomped in the face by this president. And so now the Democrats have Turek. His personal story as a Paralympian, this guy wheels himself up to people's houses, throws the wheelchair up the stairs, crawls up the stairs to knock on the door. I don't want to run against somebody who's got that kind of heart.
So this is, again, like, I'm a little allergic to the single soundbite because, as we've learned in this race, and we'll talk a little bit more in a second, like, you and I have been around the block long enough to know that, like, there's just a lot, Greg Abbott's in a wheelchair, so it's like, there's a lot, like, it's like,
it's easy to misspeak when you're talking about it.
It is
with no intention at all. Like,
it's a good starting point. Like, as somebody like me, I have not been following this race very closely, who's just checking in. I'm like, okay, there's like a starting point here for a very strong narrative. Others seem, very enthusiastic. Sarah Longwell, Iowa's on the map. Kyle Kondik, who's, works for Larry Sabato's Crystal Ball, has moved the Iowa governor, which we'll talk about in a second, from lean R to toss up, and Iowa Senate from lean R, likely R to lean R. Obviously, nobody's counting on Iowa as a victory, but it certainly would be helpful. Especially, we've got very little margin for error, and if we're going to win the Senate, we're going to have to win some tough states. Iowa's one of them, and as you said, like, it's not too long ago we were winning Iowa. I worked on the Obama campaign. We won Iowa, and I think we won pretty decently that year, the first year, and I think we might have even won it in 2012 as well. So this is where we are now. We also have a governor's race shaping up here. Rob Sand, the state auditor, I've known him since I was in college. I know you know him pretty well, is going to be running against this guy. And it's like, so this was, Trump had a handpicked candidate who lost, which is interesting of itself. And then I'm like, oh, okay, that's fascinating. But then I'm reading this tweet from Tim Miller where he says, years ago, white nationalist Steve King gets censured for his views by the party and defeated in a primary by Randy Feenstra. Feenstra is a clean-cut Christian conservative. Tonight, Feenstra may lose his governor's primary, he did, to a no-name MAGA weirdo powered by an endorsement from Steve King. So lots to unpack here. By the way, Steve King's the guy who beat our friend J.D. Schulten. J.D. ran really strong races, very tough territory. that I actually organized some of that area, Wright County and Fort Dodge area for Obama. So it looks like, yes, Trump's handpicked candidate lost, but he lost to somebody who's even more ultra-right racist. So I'm not sure there's much to applaud there.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of room over there on the right. You really, I mean, you probably had to turn sideways to fit through that little crack there.
So, yeah, and just another mark of how far the party has gone. And we've got a candidate and governor who has been really putting in the work for a long time in Rob Sand, and he did not waste any time helping to define this race. Here's him, I think, from yesterday.
To the majority of GOP primary voters who voted for someone other than Zach Lane, I agree with you. His lies about his past and the fact that he still more or less lives in Kansas means that he's not the best choice in this race. He claims to be an outsider, but he has spent his whole career working for politicians and dark money groups. He claims he's going to take on big polluters, but he did the political bidding of nitrate polluters who are squeezing every penny out of Iowa farmers for a decade. He says he's going to be Iowa first, but records show he spends more time in Kansas than he does here. And he admits he'd have to fully move here from Kansas if he gets elected. The phrase was, "If I get elected, I'll spend as much time as humanly possible in Iowa." Most of us just live here.
It's really
good. Candidate from Kansas. Does it sound familiar?
Yeah, that's funny, man.
I know you actually lived in Kansas, in Missouri. You were born in Kansas, but it's funny to echo.
No, yeah, I wasn't like, if you elect me, I'll move there. It's a great video by Rob. And what Rob is, for those who aren't familiar with Rob, what Rob has done really well is, as state auditor, he's done a great job, and he's made sure everybody knows about it. And he's been, just like that video, the way he's, pretty charismatic and a good storyteller. Like, he's told the story of the work of the auditor's office really well. And a part of the reason he's in such a strong position, and why he didn't really have any primary opposition, is because folks know him there. And I think there's a fair amount of Republicans who are like, well, that Rob Sand guy's all right. And if you think about it, auditor is a great position from which to run for governor as a Democrat. Claire McCaskill, before she was a U.S. senator, was the state auditor. And it's because you just spend all your time burnishing your credentials as a fiscal hawk, as somebody who will take care of the people's money. And Rob's done a really good job of that. And prior to that, he was a prosecutor who to some acclaim in Iowa. So I think he's in a really good position.
Yeah, I have a good buddy over there who actually was a prosecutor from Iowa, and I was talking to him not too long ago, and he told me that Rob was using the auditor's office to push a populist message too.
Oh, absolutely.
Going after like corporate cheats and things like that. It reminds me of this guy, William Winter, who was the tax collector in Mississippi, ran for tax collector under the platform of one issue, which is he was going to abolish the tax collector's office. He runs for tax collector, abolishes the tax collector's office, and then becomes governor. And he was the last truly transformative Democratic governor of Mississippi, and a real hero to a lot of people there. He just passed away a couple of years ago. He was a great guy. He's got a contemporary of Bill Clinton, but like a very different kind of guy, like way more sort of buttoned up. He was followed by Haley Barbour eventually, who's more Bill Clinton, maybe more Bill Clinton than Bill Clinton is. So, okay, that is Iowa. It's just exciting to have a state on the map. It's like I actually met a guy running for Jonathan Christ Tompkins the other day. I've known him for years, but he's running for Alaska governor. We should have him on at some point. He's amazing.
Cool.
We got him and our Senate candidate in Alaska, who's really compelling as well. So we've got some of these states on the map. Now, one state that we should carry in every possible way is California. Man, it's hard to analyze California. I almost suggested we have our friend Adisu, who's been on TV all week, break it all down for us. But it seems like it's Becerra heading to the runoff.
Yeah,
an outside chance that Steyer could make up the ground, but probably not. Is that essentially where we are?
I guess. As a guy from Missouri, have been having trouble summoning a great deal of interest in this, but
Yeah.
I understand that the country is, look, it's like one of the biggest economies in the world. And no matter what, if you're a Democrat, I guess you should care, because the governor of California is going to be somebody with an outsized influence on the country and the party. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to make enemies or lose friends, but what I would say is, from my perspective, if you just look at, and I don't live in California, don't vote in California, don't pay taxes in California, so I will be looking at this solely through the perspective of who do I want to elevate to a platform where they can speak, on behalf of the party by necessity of being the governor of California, whether that elevates them to something else or not. It's just a platform. I would err toward Becerra over Steyer on that, having not really ever spent much time around Becerra, but having spent some time around Steyer. Is that diplomatic the way I did that? I don't know.
No, I like what's crazy about Becerra is I don't know a lot about Becerra. I had an old boss who I won't name who told me that Becerra was her favorite cabinet member. But then another old boss, and this is public, so I could say it, Susan Rice, has been going after him on Twitter. So there's some bad blood there. Apparently something happened with the border. And I'll just say this. Susan is a diplomat, but she's also diplomatic. Reputation aside, publicly, she doesn't get into a lot of fights. Something must have happened there. And I'm very curious as to what that is. There's all kinds of finger pointing about something involving the border during the Biden administration, whatever. I find it fascinating. I would not want to be on the wrong side of Susan Rice, but I just find it interesting that this is where we are. I couldn't tell you the first thing about the differences between most of these candidates, and I apologize to we have probably many California listeners. But we just we got to admit our ignorance here. It's not something we know a whole lot.
Yeah.
And DM us if you want ahead of the runoff. If you're California listeners, I don't want to dismiss you. If you really want to deep dive, we know the best guy in the business, so we can have him on ahead of the runoff to do an analysis of that and a DSU. So DM us if there's a lot of demand for that. We had another guest win. Adam Hamway, right? He was on here not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed him. I did a phone call with him in addition to the show, in addition to our interview. And compelling dude. Was the, he's a Army surgeon, and he's the one who actually did the emergency surgery on Tammy Duckworth, and has done work in the Gaza Strip and all sorts of places. And that he'll be, and I think that's a pretty Democratic district. So he'll be a pretty awesome, I think, addition to Congress.
Yeah, I was actually just in his district a couple of weeks ago for a wedding. Saw his signs all over the place. Yeah. That's where my grandma lives. Well, we're going to take a break, Jason. When we come back, we are going to talk about Graham Platner and everything going on there. We've also got a ton of very interesting stories. Trump's $1.8 billion fund, Megyn Kelly going even further against MAGA, a rift potentially brewing between Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, Scott Pele in 60 Minutes, Ivanka and Jared building their own private Epstein Island. I mean, there's a lot coming up here. But before we get there, my next book, which is coming out in September, is now officially available for pre-order this week. It's called The Invisible List. And it's all about how every year after I was running schools, I started to tackle one new skill, hobby or passion every year, and treat each year like a school year. And it's part memoir, but it's really, most importantly for you, is how to, get the list down of things you've always wanted to learn, whether it's Spanish, violin, guitar, finishing your novel, whatever it is, and how to actually go about tackling that. Your wife is profiled in the book, Jason, as you know. I profile a lot of people from all walks of life, people who've dealt with illnesses, people who've dealt with grieving from losing a spouse and taken on their spouse's prior passion, all kinds of inspiring stories. So people can pre-order it. And by pre-ordering it, if you email me, you can email my assistant at lauren@orangeboatmedia.com. That's LAUREN at orangeboatmedia.com. You can send us the pre-order link. I actually got this from you, Jason, this tactic. And you can join a posse that I've started which we've got now about 100 people who sign up for this posse. And the posse, you can get early access to some content from the book, invites to certain trainings that I have in a community that I'm building, early access to tickets to a Costa Rica retreat that I'm starting. And I'm going to be picking 2 people at random, one person who'll get free board and a free ticket to my Costa Rica retreat in 2027. And another person will get 6 months of free coaching from me. So pre-order that book this week. If you order it this week, you can get into that posse. So check it out. Yeah, we're really excited, and it'll come out in September.
Before we go to the break, what I'll say about it is I got the hard copy yesterday of the. Sorry, folks, I get the advanced copy.
Of course you do.
But it came in the mail, and so I think I'm in the second chapter, and it's really good. And I was laying in bed last night reading it, thinking about like what was on my invisible list. And I think the first item, and I'm not committing to do anything about this yet, it's a process, but the first item is I've always wanted to be able to sing, and I've never taken a singing lesson. I have an intense fear of singing in front of people, and so I never do it ever. But I've always been told, like, you have a good voice, you should, and so in fact, much like you with salsa dancing, a year ago, I actually scheduled singing lessons, and then was busy, bailed on the first one, and then just like got rid of them all. But so I might try that at some point.
I got to send you, there's an episode of Against the Rules, the Michael Lewis podcast.
No, I've heard it. I've heard it.
Oh,
yeah. And it was the same deal. I was going to do it over Zoom, just like he did. And
anyway, amazing. So. Well, thanks for the plug. Well, we'll be right back. I'm getting this in before we talk Platner, people, so that when you hate me eventually for some of my takes, you will have taken the extra. So pre-order it before.
Half of them are going to hate me, Robbie. Don't worry.
So pre-order it before you hear what I have to say next. We'll be right back. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I bought something recently that looked amazing online, and it was so bad. I thought I did everything right too. I checked the reviews, I compared options, I watched YouTube videos, and then it showed up and I was like, this was not what I ordered. The quality was off, the reviews clearly weren't real, and now I'm stuck dealing with returns, shipping, refunds, the whole thing. Not sure if I'll ever get my money back. And that's the worst part about shopping online now. It's like you can't tell what something is, whether if it's really truly quality or not. And it's easy to pick the wrong thing. And that's why I wish I had used dupe.com's new research for me tool before I bought it. A few days later, I'm about to buy something new. I just moved into this new apartment. I'm buying tons of stuff. And already, things are dramatically different. And so instead of risking another disaster, I took the exact same search and put it to dupe.com research for me. And I completely have a totally different experience. No ads at the top, no sponsored best pick that someone paid for. I just walked through, looked at the options, was able to clearly assess whether something was good, whether it was worth it, and why. And I'm thinking, sitting there, saying, you know what? This would have saved me from the last purchase I made, and saved me a ton of time. And I feel good about what I'm buying now. I don't have to wince when I'm opening the box, worry that something's going to come out that's totally different than what I paid for. And so you should give dupe.com a look, and type in something like, hey, comfortable couch under $1,000, and see what comes in, just to see what it looks like. Or just, search for things that you long had on your list, and didn't have the time to research. And you'll go through a bunch of options. It'll pull real sources from people you can actually trust. It'll filter out sponsored links and recommendations, and it'll give you a straight answer on what to buy and why. And you'll also get a full breakdown on features, specs, and pricing. And my favorite part, it actually tells you what not to buy too. So it actually takes a position, which can save you from making a really expensive mistake. So if it takes research to buy it, let Dupe do it for you. Stop wasting time comparing options. Just go to dupe.com and tell it what you're looking for. That's dupe.com to feel finally confident about what to buy. ED is way more common than most guys think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMSS offers a straightforward way to handle it. HIMSS connects you with a licensed healthcare provider online, giving you simple access to legitimate ED treatment options from home.
home, no awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines. Just complete a simple online intake, and a provider will review your information to determine if treatment is right for you. And if subscribed or prescribed, your treatment ships directly to your door in discreet packaging. And that includes sildenafil, also known as the generic for Viagra, and it's available through Hims at 95% less than the brand name version. And if that option isn't right for you, there are additional treatment options available so that you can find what works best for your body. And it's straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple online access to personalized affordable care for ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority for your free online visit. hims.com/majority. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark for Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed with Viatris.
Starting something new isn't just hard, it's terrifying. So much work goes into this thing that you're not entirely sure will work out, and it can be hard to make that leap of faith. Trust me, I know. When I started, any number of the businesses that I've started, each time I wasn't sure I knew what I was doing. For example, and when we started this podcast or the last debate, I was like, is anybody going to listen? Is anybody going to watch? What if I make a fool out of myself? What if nobody, recently I started a fitness community. What if nobody wants to sign up? Now I know I was right in believing in myself and launching those things, but despite all the fears, it also helps when you have a partner like Shopify on your side to help. And Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like the Midas Touch Network to brands just getting started. So you can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, when you can easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. What if people haven't heard about your brand? Well, Shopify helps you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. What if you get stuck? Well, Shopify is always there to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer service. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/majority. Go to shopify.com/majority. That's shopify.com/majority.
All right, Jason, we had Graham Platner on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I'm at this conference right now, and I am not in Maine, but all anybody wants to talk about is Graham Platner. And I know our audience has had a lot of thoughts because I've heard from them on all sides of the spectrum. And so I figured people want to hear about this. So I'm going to assume people have a general sense of this, but the short story is that over the weekend, a story broke that Platner had been sending some kinds of sexually suggestive text messages to multiple women recently, and that his wife,
prior to the campaign and at the beginning of, I think, his marriage.
Yes, and that his wife had disclosed this to the campaign as part of something that I'm sure you're very familiar with, which is at the beginning of a campaign, you tend to just drop everything. If it's a good campaign, right?
Like
you want
self-research, they call it.
Self-research. What are we anticipating and all that? Platner's wife gave a press conference in which she defended him. Sorry.
I want to illustrate this a little further, which is, this is not a revelation that came out because somebody was upset at him or Platner, to my knowledge, none of these women were the source. It was his wife had a conversation with a woman who worked on the campaign, who no longer works on the campaign, who then divulged that private conversation to, a news outlet. I'm not saying that makes it any different in terms of a moral judgment. I'm just saying, like, to me, that is relevant, that it was like, it was not something they were going out of their way to hide from the campaign or anything like that.
Yep. And his wife gave a press conference in which she said that they're still married and they've been working through it. Said she very much believes in his campaign. He's been a little bit like I've been trying to parse his statements where he's kind of gone after the press a little bit here and there. He's somewhat like it was kind of hard to parse. Like some of his statement was a semi-denial, but in context of everything we know, couldn't possibly be a denial. He didn't outright say this is fully untrue, but said kind of attacked the press for covering it. It has led to a lot of back and forth. Burgess Everett tweeted the following, which I think summarizes where we are. He says, here's where Dems are on Platner. They think there's more hits coming. They don't see him getting off the ballot, even as they consider the possibility. Many are saying Americans have a lot bigger problems than Platner's marriage scandal and scandals. Senate Majority PAC still has reservations up for the fall. The DSCC says Dems are dedicated to defeating the Republicans like Susan Collins, who will enable his harmful agenda. Win at the Senate probably is not possible without beating Collins. Schumer met with Platner yesterday, as did other Senate Democrats. He said, I met with Platner today. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. And every follow-up question, he basically gave the same answer. Harry Enton and CNN, I think was quick. And this is before, we just got an internal poll right before this recording from Platner campaign that has him up 4, which is not great if you're thinking about the history of Collins overperforming. She's always overperformed by more than 4 points. Obviously, this is the beginning of this story. But here's what Harry Enton had to say about the race.
If you go back 2 months ago, it was about a 50-50 split, right? Now Republicans, again, it's close, but Republicans are now slightly favored to take back the Senate, no doubt in part because of what is going on in Maine, which just makes that path, which was already difficult, a little bit more treacherous.
This feels like a Platner tax right now in those overall stances to take the Senate. Harriet, thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend.
We got a lot of news this morning. We'll be right back.
That's just prediction markets.
But before we get into it, can I just say like how much I hate the fact that we look at the prediction markets to figure out what's going to happen. It's just a group of people with their opinions. They don't know anything we don't know. And it's all a freaking pinwheel because it's like the news reports this and then the prediction markets respond to that. And then the news reports that the prediction markets responded to it. And I hate that.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to go first or me on how I'm viewing this right now?
I'll go first. Look, let's back way out. Chuck Schumer and the DSCC picked Janet Mills. I've met Janet Mills, like in real life. I only met Platner over, the electrons, as they used to say in the Army, 2 weeks ago for the first time on our show. I've met Janet. She's a very nice person, very competent, very skilled politician, and is also, I think a 2-term governor, like, in many respects on paper, like the perfect candidate. I also understand that she kind of wanted to retire from politics. She didn't really want to run for the Senate because I think she's pushing 80, if I'm
she's
recalling
old
correctly.
Yeah.
Which 80 is a great spry age. It's not a great spry age to start a new job, a new career, like, which is in, the U.S. Senate. So understandably, I think there were people who are skeptical of that in the Democratic primary electorate in Maine. There are other Democrats, many other Democrats in Maine who Schumer and the DSCC could have gone to recruit, but they didn't. They went all in on Janet Mills. Janet Mills' campaign basically failed to fundraise effectively enough and failed to gain real traction against Platner, who people found very exciting. Okay, so I want to start by saying, as of now, there is not an alternative. Like, if somebody has got some other great candidate that they want to put up with, then we can discuss it as Platner or this person. But that's not happening because so far primary voters, Democratic primary voters, when they've been polled in Maine, have been saying that they want this guy. And they seem to still be saying that in the wake of the controversies. The controversies including his tattoos, his past, awful things he said on the internet, and now this texting thing. Right? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, the Reddit, the texting. Yeah, I mean, there's other things. Like, I'll get into a couple other things, but I think those are the big ones. Yeah, they're all kind of like an accumulation of trying to piece together the guy's background. But I don't want to preview like my sort of anxiety
Okay.
about this situation. Yeah.
So what I would say about this is the reality of this is probably your candidate is A. B, I think that voters are more willing to forgive past transgressions than we give them credit for, particularly than we give them credit for on the Democratic side. So I'm gonna say a little about that, and then I'm gonna say what I think is the counter argument to that and respond to it, and then it'll be your turn. There's a reason that when you talk to people who are politically engaged but have never run for office, one of the most common things they will say when you ask them if they ever thought about running for office, or when you talk to them about, running for office, they often people say, "Oh man, I could never run because I've had like experiences in my life and I've lived the kind of life." Like, it is a throw off thing that people say all the time, that, with my background, I could never run because of this or that. I'd get, and that is because it is far more common to have lived a life that will not look perfect upon examination than it is to have lived a life that would look perfect upon examination. And that is what I think we are seeing with people being so quick to look past these things with Platner, because I think they look at it and one, they say, look, this is, I think rightfully they say, this is a guy who we sent to war 4 times, and that has an effect on a person. And now that person's been through therapy and made changes in their life. And like, for me personally, not at all difficult to believe that he's a totally different person than he has been in the past. And that doesn't mean that you get therapy and then all of, it all changes at once. Like, I believe it's a journey, and he's probably still changing and getting better. And I think that's true for all of us. And I think people are really willing to accept that. And I think an unwillingness to accept that in our candidates has probably caused us to miss out on some pretty effective messengers and good candidates who are actually good people who have made mistakes in the past as candidates. That's the first thought that I have. The second thought that I have about this is that people are going to say, okay, yeah, but he's not been all that forthcoming about this or that, and to that I say, yeah, because that stuff's embarrassing. Like, most people would be like, not in a hurry to disclose embarrassing things, which again I think makes him a little more of a normal person. And so look, yeah, maybe there's more stuff that's going to come out and it's going to be disqualifying. But for me, thus far, like particularly this last thing, I don't think anybody is in any position to judge a couple who says, this is a thing we dealt with in our marriage, and it's been dealt with. Because, like, how many marriages have not dealt with stuff? To me, it's not relevant. But it is to other people. I understand.
I think from my perspective, first of all, stipulated that if I were living in Maine, whoever the Democratic nominee is who I would vote for, unless that person turns out to be a true psycho. Like, there was that situation in Texas where the woman was like saying she wanted to build concentration camps or something. And I'm like, yeah, that's one I would sit out.
Yeah.
I would not vote for her. So within reason, like, unless this guy, we learn that he's a secret, serial killer or something, I would vote for him over Susan Collins, who's been enabling some really bad stuff. And I'll show a clip from Tim Miller in a second when he makes that argument. That being said, I do have a lot of anxiety about him. And for people who support him, like, I know everybody thinks any criticism of him is some kind of an endorsement of Susan Collins. I'm sorry. Like, you don't listen to this podcast for me to just, like, do a 60-minute ad for Democrats. Like, we're having a conversation here about what I truly believe about this candidate who was just on this podcast.
And the primary hasn't happened yet. Like, this is the time to have these conversations.
Right. And so here's my problem. I'm not sure he was honest with us 2 weeks ago. And I'll kind of come back around to that. And I think that there's this sense that authenticity is how somebody dresses or whether they curse a lot or whatever. But I actually think authenticity starts with looking people in the eyes, especially voters, and being honest. And that allows for what you said, which is being honest about the mistakes that you've made and all of that. And I think the clock starts when you run for office. And that the minute you start lying while you're running for office, then you're not authentic anymore. You're just a liar. And I don't know whether Graham Platner is a liar. I certainly have a lot of questions. And he is too new on the scene and has a lot of things that require us to trust his explanation of things. And there was like an example where we asked him about the tattoo. And again, like I am perfectly willing to accept somebody who got a tattoo that they regret getting rid of it. What I thought at the time, and then you and I talked about again last week, and then I've been sitting with since, is that there was this moment where I asked him about, or said listener asked him about the campaign manager, I think it was, right? I can't remember the exact detail, but it was the campaign manager had said that he had confided in her that he knew about it, and that there was some other Reddit posts that he was in the middle of, or somebody else mentioned that they knew what it was, plus common sense and the timing of when he got rid of it, where I'm just like, you're asking me to believe you and your explanation for this, which again, I don't even care about the thing as much if you've changed your mind and grown as a human being, right? But I need an explanation that I can take home with me to be like, I feel comfortable with this. And it's just a lot to ask when there's a lot of other things that show that you might have some character deficits that are not that far away, right? I'm not talking about when you're 25, I'm talking about in the past few years, and you are running for office for the people of Maine and for this country because you're U.S. Senator, you're voting policy for all of us, and you conducted an exercise within your campaign where you knew your vulnerabilities. You gave multiple interviews after that where you were asked if there was more stuff to come out, and you said no multiple times. And now you're asking me to trust you when now we know this has come out since you knew about it. So you lied in those interviews about whether there were more things to come out. Like it would take like a pretty slick lawyer to be like, that's not something that would have been a scandal. Come on. Like that. So now I'm wondering what else is going to come out. I'm also wondering, like, what am I hanging my hat on to say that this guy has the integrity to make me trust every other explanation about his background? And once again, I will vote for him over Susan Collins. I'm just worried about running against a person like Susan Collins who overperforms every year, and who's running against somebody who, and I said this to you offline, which is my impression after that interview is like, I'm worried that he doesn't like take direction from people around him. I was getting that vibe. He needs to have people who tell him the truth around him, and he needs to get his shit together in this campaign so that he's telling a consistent story that's an honest story about his background. And I am willing to accept anybody's growth. I'm an educator. Anybody who says I did this thing wrong, it could be a DUI, it could be cheating on your wife, it could be getting the wrong tattoo, it could be speaking a certain way about other soldiers, it could be like almost anything. I'm willing to accept people to grow from. I just haven't been able to piece together all of his explanations in a way where I'm like, I understand this guy. And it's not for my vote. I don't live in Maine. If I did, I would vote for him anyway in the general election. I'm just worried about other people who are looking at this and being like, I need to make heads or tails of who this guy is. And I'm concerned about it.
Yeah. I think those are reasonable concerns. I mean, to be honest, like, I don't think I have the clearest judgment because he's a combat veteran with PTSD, right? So like for me,
and I get that. If I were you, if somebody commented to me and I almost responded to him, but as a rule, I never ever disagree with you unless we're on this podcast. If somebody's gonna DM me, I'm not gonna be like somebody, I forget who this listener was. I think he must be messaging you too. We had a problem with something about the way that we interacted on the tattoo. And I'm gonna write back and be like, the reason why Jason and I work is because he is radically empathetic and I'm radically cynical. And so our dynamic works because I'm going to give the cynical take and Jason's Ted Lasso. So it's like, I think that's how we work. And this is particularly on your corner because you have so much in common in terms of the PTSD and been fighting for your country. And I did not. And so it's a lot, but again, like, he's in politics. So he's asking us all to make like a judgment on him as a person and as a leader. And that's where things get dicey,
Yeah, and so I get that, and I think what I don't know is how voters in Maine are going to react to it. Like, I just don't know. I only know how I would, and I think it's an interesting challenge of the notion from the Democratic point of view of like, what, how far do we want to go with making sure that our candidates are representative of like regular people who go through things, right?
Right.
Because on the one hand, it's like, okay, here's a guy who has some things in his past he's not proud of, and maybe even some things in his past that he doesn't really want to talk about because he's not like, for me, I guess that's the thing. It's like when I look at it, and I know that this is a problem when you're running for office, but I don't like, it doesn't strike me as a guy who's not being honest. It strikes me as a person who is a private person who has done some things they're not proud of, who is now running for office to serve in that way and would rather not talk about those things. And like, and that may not be okay when running for office. It's kind of okay with me, but that's probably because of my unique experience. So I'm open to the idea that that is a problem. But so that's sort of, to me, it's sort of like, he strikes me as a guy who never really saw himself running and is not the type of personality who in any way was jonesing to be a politician. And so therefore he frankly just kind of strikes me as like an introverted guy who's like, I'd like to help, and has some feelings that a lot of people agree with. And that might not jive with running. But so that's why it's like hard for me to sort through, because I look at it and I don't immediately, and you're right, like I am radically empathetic. So I don't immediately see somebody who's trying to hide the ball, but I do see how other people see it that way. I don't know if it was the same person, but somebody who wrote the thing to me about the tattoos, I think it was a different person. Maybe I think I just said like, you know, if every soldier or Marine who got drunk, if every friend of mine who's a soldier and Marine who got drunk and got a stupid tattoo couldn't be my friend anymore, like I'd have a lot fewer friends.
Right.
And so, you know, I don't even know. Did he get the tattoo removed? I don't even know.
I think he did. But if I were in the room with him, right? I was thinking about this. I just saw somebody who's close with Tallarico who said to me at this conference just now, this morning, who said, hey, I saw Tallarico give this speech. It was awful. And then on the way to the car, and he's relaying a story secondhand, but he said on the way to the car, he was like verbalizing it, and he gave a crystal clear, beautiful answer. And I said to my friend, and he was almost like worried about it. I was like, no. I was like, this early in the campaign, the ability of him to have that conversation and internalize it is how he will get better. And he will get better if that's how he's talking. And he's got that level of humility. And this is where, and this is why I kind of call, I don't know if I called you or I was texting you after the interview that we had with him, because I was just dealing with it. I was like trying to process it. And you and I have been around a lot of politicians, and I've coached a lot of politicians, and my spidey sense told me that the big hurdle this guy has to go through, and I think this past week has only made me believe this more, is a humility one. Whereas I think this guy, he in some ways reminds me of my brother. He's like kind of smart, very compelling talker.
Also a combat veteran.
Also a veteran, but who doesn't really take well to any challenge or feedback. And that was a little bit of what I was picking up on. And that is kryptonite for somebody with the kind of vulnerabilities and areas for growth that this guy has. He has to be an athlete as a politician who's got to have people in his corner who are like, nope, that didn't sound good. That's not great. No, let me be honest with you. This is going to be a vulnerability. We need to talk about it today. No, you can't just say that this is a conspiracy against you. Like, you actually have to answer the people of Maine. No, like, you know, there are people of Maine who do think infidelity is a character flaw. So you actually do need to like address it, even if you think that it's surmountable. Like, you just need to have people talking to you like this. And everything I kind of picked up from him was that he does not allow that kind of energy. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I was picking up on when I was talking to him.
I think that is a completely fair concern. Like, as a, you know, it's not so much it is a little bit of a voter type concern, but really in our case, it's more of an operative concern. And I think it's reasonable. And I will just say, like, you know, as somebody who is a veteran with PTSD, you know, that, and, you know, so I can completely kind of put myself inside Graham Platner's mind in some ways. I also do think that one of my real strengths, or I would say actually one of the advantages I had, was that even though I was those things, I started in politics at the bottom, and I didn't, because I was 26 years old, I didn't lateral in, running for US Senate. So I had a lot of time to learn those lessons and to learn that, oh, this is really hard. And in many ways, it's a completely different skill set. And so I had the advantage of understanding from the beginning, like, yeah, there's a lot about being a military leader that I can use in this line of work, but there's also a whole lot of soft skills I don't have that I need to learn. And I, even though I ran at a very young age, I was elected Secretary of State at 31 and state leg at 27, but that gave me 4 years to, kind of get better. And then by the time I'm running for bigger offices, I had even more time. And like the example you give with Talarico in the speech, one of the things I learned in the Army that I took to this was a humility about always trying to improve. And I also frankly learned it a lot from my wife, more than anything probably. And that is that, like, when I would finish a speech, no matter who was staffing me, it might be like an intern who's brand new and doesn't, really have any experience or anything. I just made it a habit of, the second we would get back in the car, I would turn to them and say, do you have any notes? And I didn't think like I was doing something special. It's just kind of what I had learned, because I had gotten so many good notes from people with me. And sometimes if it was a really junior person, it would kind of startle them and they would be like, no, it was great. And I'd be, no, seriously. And I'd have to kind of talk them into giving me feedback, but it made me so much better. And I will agree with you that Graham Platner does. I don't know if he takes notes, but I do feel like he is a guy who is running with a purpose because he feels deeply about something. And he is a guy with a real strength of his is he clearly is on a mission, and that's a great thing. But sometimes when you're on a mission and you're so certain of your mission, it can cause you to be overly certain of how you're going about the mission and not take feedback. And so I don't know, but I can understand. I think that's a fair thing to question and proves that.
We had a bunch of takes we're going to go through, but I'm not going to go through them because it'll take us forever. And I think we've reached the end of the road on this one. But listeners, send us your messages. I'm sure we'll hear.
It'll be interesting.
We've got everything covered here. But that's, like everybody knows this, after the election, especially last time, we both made a promise to the audience that we had to air out these conversations when they happen, as opposed to waiting till it's too late. And actually, again, you don't listen to this because you want an ad for the Democrats. Like, we listen because we're trying to wrestle with the toughest problems of the day.
Can I say one last thing in defense of Platner and the comments that he's made, or of the behaviors, which is that I have seen people saying, I've seen, like, I think a New York Times column arguing that if we nominate Platner, then we are the same as the Republicans in nominating Trump. And I really, really disagree with that. And here's why. Because saying awful things to and about people, hurting people with your words, being, like the way he talked about women and the way he is accused, of all that. There's a big difference between having done that in the past and doing that in your current form. There is a big difference between running as the person campaigning, saying the terrible things and doing the bad things, and a person saying, that used to be me, it's no longer me. I'm not saying therefore you have to accept it. I'm just saying, to say that if Democrats nominate Platner, it is no different than Republicans nominating Trump, I do not think is fair.
Yeah, and of the many things that we're going to talk about, there's this article from Jerusalem Demsis in the Argument, which I thought was the best thing I read about this. And she made a really good point about, she said, hey, I think she said that I would support Platner. But the one red line she was drawing was people who cross over to saying this behavior is either acceptable or not a big deal. And she's like, let's say it's bad behavior. And I think her more colorful way is she says Graham Platner is a scumbag Mainers should vote for, but I'm not using that word. I'm not using that word, but she's basically saying we have to be careful not to cross over into validating the behavior. We're saying it's not a big deal, but instead of saying, hey, there is a choice to be made, and that Susan Collins votes for very terrible things to happen in the real world. And when faced with that choice, we go with the person who's not going to do those things. And as you said, it helps, and this is one of the pleas I have for Team Platner, it helps when we have a clear statement and believable statement of how you've changed. That also helps a lot. Okay, we've got a couple other things to talk about here. One is that the Trump administration has announced that they're going to drop plans for the $1.8 billion fund that we talked about last week for the, basically handouts to January 6 people. Yeah. I think that's just largely good news. I think it was largely because of pressure from senators, those who are in the sort of not given enough mode after losing, like Cornyn and Tillis and people like that who've either retired or lost. So that's good news. Maybe there's not much to talk about here, but we can cheer that on.
It's good that like sometimes bad things don't happen.
Yes,
because they're so bad that, and also because Trump is so weak politically that he can be stopped at times on some very bad things, not on all bad things, unfortunately.
I'll give this dealer's choice. Do you want me to play this Megyn Kelly clip or just describe it to you?
You know what? Why not?
Yeah,
let's hear from Megyn.
She's dialed it up to what do they say? To 11 or whatever. Yeah, she dialed it up to 11.
There is, what's core MAGA now?
I have no idea.
I think I know. Trump has said from the beginning,
pedophile supporting Israeli lobby. Well, I have no idea.
Need a different acronym. But Trump has said from the beginning that he defines what MAGA is. MAGA is what I say it is, he has said. And he's not wrong. It's his moniker. It's his campaign slogan. And all along, he's defined what is and is not MAGA. And he told me personally, MAGA will feel the way I want them to feel. I'll tell them how to feel about this, that, or the other thing. And they will. And he has been totally right on that. The problem for Trump now is that he has defined MAGA literally to those who agree with Mark Levin. If you don't agree with Mark Levin, you're not MAGA, which means you must be a neocon whose main issue is what's in the best interest of Israel.
I find so interesting the intramural debates between different podcast personalities on the we apparently need to, I mean, you kind of had some differences with Hassan Piker, but I guess we're just not picking enough fights with other.
Apparently is the most notable thing about me. At this entire conference, people are going up to me left and right, talking to me about Hassan Piker. I'm like, I didn't realize I became a Hassan Piker expert.
What conference are you at? Or do you not want to say?
I'm at this thing called the Welcome Pack. Yeah, it's like, I was just talking about education issues, but that's where I saw our old producer.
Apparently the money is in picking fights with people who are on your same political side, because they're doing it on the right like all the time now.
Yeah, it's in a way fun if you keep it about the issues, right? Like once you start getting personal, I don't think it's fun for anybody, at least for me, it's not. And that's why when I wrote my Piker piece, I started by saying, hey, I'm going to mention a bunch of people in this article. I like all of them. And I meant that, like, as people. I just happened to disagree with the way they were engaging on that issue. That is obviously not what's happening on the right. Now, one interesting cleavage that's happening here is, we have the Daily Wire, which was for a time like the biggest alternative media source on the right. It's where Candace Owens was. It's where Ben Shapiro is now. It's also where Matt Walsh currently is. And he tweeted something that certainly turned heads. He tweeted, pretty much all of the prominent voices who supported the Iran war assured us it would be over by now. None of them will admit they were wrong. Even less will admit that their initial assurances were based on nothing but their own wish casting. This whole shit show has been an enormous waste of time and resources, and our country has not benefited from it at all. Its advocates have moved the goalposts repeatedly and have even to this day refused to clearly articulate what constitutes a victory and how we'll know that it's been achieved. I mean, this is interesting on a whole bunch of levels, but that is a subtweet of his boss, like Ben Shapiro.
100%. And it's the majority view in the country. It's not just, I mean, like, I don't know if it's the majority view in the Republican Party or on the right side of the aisle, but it's obviously the vast majority view on the left. I think it's the majority of independents, and it's clearly the majority of the country. This was a dumb war from the beginning, and it just gets dumber all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge political liability and a moral travesty, and it's actually a statement to how little credibility we as a country and Trump has, that actually not that many people talk about it anymore. Like, it's just nobody.
Yeah.
Trump could have tweeted this morning, I'm not even sure, the equivalent of the, like, remember that statement he made that we're all
civilization.
Like, yeah, he probably tweets that every day. I don't even know, but nobody's taking him seriously anymore.
Mhm.
Okay, another lightning round story here is what's going on at 60 Minutes. My God. So Scott Pelley, who's like their big kind of like on-air voice, was fired from 60 Minutes after it was reported that he had a very tense meeting with the new producer of the show, this guy Nick Bilton, who actually is a really good journalist, has written some really good books, but is tainted. And, you know, inevitably this is no matter who Nick Bilton was, he's coming in under Bari Weiss, who answers to, what's his name? Ellison, who answers to Trump, right? So this is not going to be a clean exercise no matter what. So he was fired after he challenged Bilton in this meeting. Pele tweeted, "For my part, new management has instructed me to inject falsehoods and bias into a politically sensitive story. I've been told to include assertions that were unverified. To date, in every case, I've managed to ignore these instructions or refuse them. Recently, politicians have been invited to choose correspondents for interviews on the broadcast. Giving politicians control over 60 Minutes interviews is not how this is done. Finally, incompetence and unprofessionalism in the new management have wreaked havoc. In a case involving one of my stories, the entire program came within 19 minutes of not going on air at all." He has Shirley's been going back and forth with Bari Weiss actually over the course of the past few hours on this. Things do not appear to be going well, Jason, over there at CBS and in Bari Weiss world.
It's really sad because, like,
you've done them with 60 Minutes. So you've done some good stuff with them.
Yeah, it's sad because, look, as Americans, you know, we 60 Minutes has been a program that both sides of the aisle trusted and looked forward to for a very long time. And personally, before the election and before the merger and Bari Weiss coming in and everything, I had the experience of, being part of a 60 Minutes feature, and it was a double length. It was like a big piece for them. It was, usually their pieces are like 11, 12 minutes, and they dedicated like 22, 23 minutes to this thing. So it was like 2 segments. And I had the experience of pre-merger 60 Minutes, pre-Trump, second term 60 Minutes, getting to see, and I've obviously, as have you, been around a lot of television news and have seen, and I've done interviews with the New York Times and feature pieces. So I've experienced like top level, journalism, and 60 Minutes was the top of all of it. I mean, they researched the story and double checked everything that I or, the Raufis, the Afghan family that was featured, said with lots of different sources. And they did this for like 6 months, at least. And so it was really inspiring, the level of journalism and the level of care that they put into telling. And that was not a politically tinged story at all. That was frankly, just a feel-good human interest story. It wasn't about me as a politician. It wasn't about the policy toward Afghanistan. It was just about the one story of Operation Bella. And that's the kind of care they put into it. And so it's really sad to me to see this treated the same way everything else that Trump has touched, which he has kind of touched this, has been treated, which is just to take oftentimes things that are really excellent and a lot of care has been put into, and then to just gold plate them and make them not work. And it's really sad.
It is sad. And I'm just puzzled by somebody like Nick Bilton, who is an incredible journalist. He wrote the Twitter book. He wrote the book about, it's called Hatching Twitter, is that book. He wrote the book about the Silk Road founder. He's got a very eclectic background, and I don't know who he is as a person, good or bad, but why take this job when you're that successful? Like, you're coming in in an organization that's on the decline, that has no trust, where the staff hates you, and you have to answer to somebody who answers to somebody who answers to Trump. And that has been very clear that they have forfeited any integrity, which was a lot that they built up over the years. I mean, Nick Bilton, if you're Nick Bilton friends out there, like talk some sense into Nick, get him out of there. Like he's just going to destroy a career that he's built up being over there. If they call me tomorrow, Jason, and I don't care how much money they offer. They're like, work for Bari Weiss and the Ellisons. It would be like you're essentially working for Trump. You know, there's no paycheck that would make me do that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I can't get a read on whether it is Bari Weiss and the Ellisons or it's just this with CBS News. It's a capitulation, because there are other people I talk to who I've met people recently who work with Bari Weiss who have nothing but good things to say about her. I've worked with people who have great things to say about David Ellison. So I don't know if it's very particular to, you know, obviously Trump is very sensitive to 60 Minutes and he sued and all that stuff. So I can't get a read on that, but I just think it's really sad because all those people who I worked with, save maybe one at 60 Minutes, you know, a couple of years ago, I think they're all out now. And most of those people have been there a long time and had done incredible work. So it's just it's a real loss for the country.
Well, one very fascinating video clip that I could not let this episode end without showing to you is Ivanka Trump giving an interview about some of her future plans.
I'm working on an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch. Correct.
Well, it's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean. We were on a friend's boat and we stopped for a swim. Effectively, that's how we found it. We swam to the islands. We went on a hike barefoot all the way up to the top, and we were just captivated. And it stayed with us ever since. And over the course of many years, we developed the opportunity to help realize its potential and transform it, but with a lot of restraint and care because the land is so beautiful.
Let me read you, we heard from Glenn Greenwald last week. He's on a bit of a tear. I would say I'm normally not a Glenn Greenwald fan, but when he wants to be funny, he could be really funny. This is what he tweeted. He says, the most darkly funny aspect of this video is that Ivanka Trump speaks as if she went on some profound, prolonged spiritual and philosophical journey to ascertain the meaning of life and concluded that the most elevated human state is to live on a gigantic private island in the Mediterranean in a sprawling mansion paid for with billions of dollars given to her husband by the Saudis and Emiratis to ensure favorable treatment by him and her dad in their exercise of the powers of the American presidency. Real uplifting stuff.
Oh, God. It just makes you sick.
Yeah. Well, this is what happens. Like, there's this whole class of people out there who now have alienated themselves so much, and now they hate the people because the people hate them. Mm-hmm. And they try to live in more exclusive places because Ivanka Trump can't walk down the streets of New York. She's not even like people like Lauren Santo Domingo, who's like one of her old friends. Like even her old New York elite society people don't want to talk to her anymore.
And she thinks it's because she's not a Democrat anymore, and she doesn't understand it's because she's a villain.
Yes,
I think it was Bill Burr, maybe, who not too long ago, somebody asked him a question about like Elon Musk or somebody, and he was like, I just don't understand becoming a billionaire, being angry, and not wanting to use all your money to just make the world better. I just turned 45. When I was 22, I married the refugee girl that I had met when I was 17. And she, at the time, had the amount of money that a 22-year-old who had come to the country as a refugee 14 years earlier would have, which is she had zero money. She had actually just debt. That's all, she had. And, I came from, my family was comfortable. But I remember my dad saying to me, before we got married, he said, do you have a plan? Like, you want to go into public service. Do you have a plan as to how you're going to earn a living? And I said, well, actually, I think Diana's probably going to do really well. And he was like, well, really? And, he occasionally brings that up and he's like, hey man, good call. You nailed it. And so now I'm 45, we're at a point where as of the last couple of years, we've been doing well for a while, but as of the last couple of years, it's finally not finally as if we were striving for this particular thing, but her career has gone in such a way that we're very comfortable now. I'm now at the point where much wealthier than my parents were, and my parents were like doing well, but we weren't crazy rich, but like, I didn't want for anything as a kid. We had a good upper middle class to lower upper class, like sort of upbringing. And there was always family money that we knew was there. If we ever needed it, we never had to draw on. Right. But I just like grew up having things, but not having extravagance. And now like it's different. We have things and we don't really do anything differently is the reason I'm telling the story. Is like,
yeah, you guys lived in the same house.
Well, yeah. Like we live in a nice neighborhood in Kansas City. We could afford to live in one of the really nice ones, but we don't have any desire to. We're able to have all the things we want. And when we sit around and think, is there something? I have like a really nice truck, and that's kind of about it. And I'm saying all this to say, like, every once in a while, we will talk and we're like, okay, there'll be some business opportunity or whatever come up, which could be like a lot of money. And then we talk about it and we just go like, well, what would we do with that? And like, if we were to do this, and the only thing we can ever come up with is, and this sounds so corny, but it really is what we say. We're like, well, we could just help more people. And I'm not saying like we're saints, because oftentimes we don't take the opportunity because we're like, that'll be a lot of work. It'll be more time away from the kids. So we don't do it. But what I'm saying is like, I cannot imagine having infinitely more wealth than we have. And like, we're doing well, but we're not like, nobody's like, oh my God, like we're just like doing really well and it's really nice. So we give more money to charity every year and we try and like help more individuals that we know. I cannot imagine having $1 billion, let alone inheriting many, many billions of dollars, and then marrying somebody who inherited many, many billions of dollars and being like, what should we do? We'll do an island and we'll fund like vicious causes, but not try to help. I just can't imagine being that way.
Well, this was actually my one for us, and I think we're there now. I was going to talk about this bad news from the Supreme Court, which is that they allowed Alabama to eliminate a congressional district. So that was the end of that story.
More of the same.
But my one for us this week was going to be, I watched this over the weekend, this Rafael Nadal documentary series on Netflix. And I had a chance to go to Mallorca in November to go to the Rafael Nadal Academy. And for people who don't know, Nadal was one of the best 3 or 4 tennis players of all time, male tennis players. And he has built in Mallorca a high school for kids, a community center, a tennis academy for adults, 3 gyms that, it's basically the center of gravity of his town. And he has a foundation that he runs out of that area too. And you spend time over there and you realize that this guy is the hero. So he would have been the hero had he not built all of this, but he has brought so much life to his community, and he lives in Mallorca. He married the girl, like you, he married the girl he knew when he was a kid. And you could tell, and I knew this being there because you talked to a lot of people about how, what is Nadal like and all this. You could tell just how the way he carried himself as an athlete, but it certainly comes across in the documentary is that here's a guy who has shown integrity throughout his life and who has brought people along and is just a genuinely good person who has made a ton of money, has nice houses. I think he probably owns a yacht. He flies private, but has poured a ton of money into his community. And I think to myself, and I'm going to write something about this at some point in the next couple of days, is like, that's success, right? Now, like, most people are never going to make even a fraction of what Nadal makes. But, I have a friend, Bradley Tusk, who lives down the street from me, who did really well, got rich in a more modest way, but rich by my standards, and opened up a bookstore that he loses money on in the neighborhood and gives tons of money to charity every year, volunteers at the soup kitchen. He walks around with Dunkin' Donuts cards so that he can hand them to homeless people. And I'm like, why these people like Ivanka and, all these like, even Bezos and all that, they give away money, but they're not connected to a community,
Right.
I'm like, the success is what Nadal is doing. It's what Bradley's doing. It's like anchoring yourself in a place. It's what you're doing. It's anchoring yourself to a place and being like, this place, these people, I can do well and do good at the same time. Yeah.
Otherwise, like, how do you be happy? Like, how does Ivanka Trump and what's his name?
Bradley.
No.
No.
Her husband is
Jared
Kushner.
Kushner.
Like, what's this finish line? That's what I want to know.
Right.
What are you like? Are you going to be happy when you get to that island? Like, I don't think you're going to find friends on the deserted island. So
Right.
it's very confusing to me, and it's their money, I guess. But like, I just don't understand seeing the world that way, and I also don't understand amassing that kind of wealth and then wanting to use it like Trump does or like Musk does to exact revenge on people who have wronged you. Like,
Right.
isn't not caring about those people the real victory? Like, not, like just being like, well, that's their thing. I just anyway.
These are the most successful people. Like when I was in Mississippi, Mississippi's got a lot of people who love Mississippi, and there's all these people who are clinging to Jackson. The late Leland Speed, he was a mentor of mine. Stuart Hood and his family have been. They're a family who are, I think, the third wealthiest people in Mississippi. They built all my schools for me when I was there, and their office, they're like a family. They show up to the office in the middle of Jackson, which most people with their wealth have moved into the suburbs or elsewhere. They go every single day in Fondren. They work. They give back to the community. All their business ventures are pretty much tied up in the city that they love, and they give a lot to nonprofits as well. And they're fucking heroes in Mississippi. I'm like, this is how you should live, Like, everybody knows they have integrity.
Pick out a piece of real estate and just be like, I'm responsible for this part of the world.
Right.
And anyway, which I guess that's what she's doing, but in a different way. So
the wildlife and wherever she is and whatever.
I'm sure it's going to be thrilled. All right. You can find Ravi everywhere at Ravi M. Gupta. You can find me at Jason Kander. You can pre-order The Invisible List, all the links for which are going to be in the show notes or on the, we'll put them in the YouTube and you'll find it. It won't be hard. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.